Now, there's been an increase in the number of teachers preying on pupils. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has confirmed that in the last 3 years, nearly 30 teachers have been fired for sexually abusing pupils. In the previous financial year, the South African Council of Educators has been investigating over 190 sexual abuse cases in schools across the country. Now, alarming, that figure, isn't it? Let's get some reaction now from the South African Democratic Teachers Union, that's SADTU. We're joined by its General Secretary, Mugwena Maluleke. Thank you very much, Mr. Maluleke, for your time here on eNCA. Shocking statistics being confirmed by the Minister as well as SACE. Have you as a union had to represent any teacher in the last 3 years for sexual misconduct at schools?
Good day, and let me greet your viewers at home. Indeed, we have represented some of the members who are members of SADTU during the past 3 years around a number of misconduct that have been committed, including the sexual misconduct.
And how did those cases go, Mr. Maluleke?
Well, because there are two separate processes. One would be at the level of the Education Labour Relations Council, which basically is headed by an independent commissioner who is well vested with issues of children, but obviously highly trained in terms of managing these particular cases where there's no manipulation by the department officials or by the schools or by friends. So those things are being had there. And then thereafter, there will be these particular processes by SACE, where they also take that particular case and then test it in terms of the ethics of SACE and then take a resolution around those particular cases. There are those particular cases that indeed some of the members or the teachers have been found guilty, and there are some where they have not been found guilty and so forth. So it is a very ugly state of affairs when we're dealing with these particular cases, because we're dealing with professionals here and dealing with our children, and these are the children we're supposed to be caring, and therefore it is highly concerning to see the number of cases really rising or increasing instead of declining.
As a union that represents these teachers, what do you attribute the rise in the statistics to?
Well, as we see the community experiencing high level of violence against women and children, we can attribute that to the fact that there's a problem of moral decay in our society, in our communities, and therefore a school, being a microcosm of the society, find itself in a situation where similar cases that are happening in the communities, in our household, find themselves in our schools. And therefore, we have to find out exactly, so that we don't have unnecessary interventions that are not informed. We have got to do a proper research, find out exactly why this particular increase and so forth. One of the reasons may be that our learners are now empowered and are aware that they are being protected by the Education Labour Relations Council, and therefore they are reporting more of these particular cases. One of the reasons might be that the school-based support team as well is encouraging the learners to do the right thing, report these particular cases, and maybe also management is beginning to be aware that it's not going to help, because there's a law that there's a case that has been passed, and it has formed jurisprudence in the country that each and every employee employed in a school has a responsibility to report these particular cases of sexual offenses or sexual misconduct that are happening in our school. So that might be some of the reasons for the increase in terms of the number, because now they're being reported.
And, you know, besides your role as a union that represents teachers to make sure that, for instance, they are paid adequately and that their employer treats them well, etc., don't you also have a responsibility as a stakeholder to ensure that these statistics don't look the way that they do?
We do have that responsibility clearly as a stakeholder, but as a union in education that basically is professional union, and it has got to care for the children that are in our custody as the parents as well, because we are parents in the level of the school. So clearly, it is as the state of affairs is quite concerning, and therefore it is something that we are dealing with. We're calling principals as forums where we talk to the principal. We are also working and calling meetings where we are saying men as partners, and then so we deal with some of these particular cases and these particular acts of misconduct that are happening in our schools. We are not folding our arms, because we would want to have a situation where some of these particular things are cases of the past, and therefore we can forget about them. We are also encouraging, obviously, each and every institution that they need to encourage those that they're employing to go and make sure that they are vetted in terms of being going to get an affidavit before they are employed, so that they can then disclose on whether they have at a particular point in time had these particular problems of sexual misconduct and so forth. So these are some of the interventions that have been put in place to ensuring that our children are protected, to ensuring that even our teachers who sometimes are also attacked sexually in our schools are also protected.
So, by agreeing that you are a stakeholder and that you have a responsibility, are you also admitting that along with the department, you failed these pupils?
Well, when the pupils are being represented and they are being protected in terms of what was happening in the past, where they were subjected to a series of cases where some of them ended up not coming to the cases because they have been really harassed, and some of them have been intimidated, we believe that we're not failing them. Hence, we see that they are reporting. Hence, we see that there are outcomes that are saying you are found guilty of this particular acts of misconduct. The problem is that we cannot do it alone as the stakeholder in education, as a union and the Department of Education. Some of these particular things are still happening in our families, and then we see where parents, when they're supposed to come and give evidence that a particular teacher has bought them a rosary in order to withdraw the case and so forth. Hence, we signed a collective agreement, SADTU and the Department of Education at the Education Labor Relations Council, that was protecting the integrity of our children by making sure that, one, they're provided with a very safe place where they can give evidence, that they're provided support and assistance to give evidence, and therefore they cannot be intimidated, and there's no one who can buy a case in order for the case to be withdrawn. So I do not agree that we have failed them. Instead, we are fighting a scourge that is within our society, and we need the society to really rally behind us and help us to be able to root out these particular problems in our schools and in our society.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Maluleke, for your time here on eNCA. That is SADTU General Secretary Mugwena Maluleke.